There's something oddly sinister about the nursery rhyme we all know. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. We sing it as children, smile at the simplicity, perhaps even giggle at the absurdity of the egg. But there is a shadow in that rhyme, a depth buried just beneath the light-hearted melody. It's a riddle, veiled in rhyme. A tragic tale. But who, truly, was Humpty Dumpty? Was he merely a jolly, round egg teetering on the edge of a wall, or was he something else entirely? And what happened to him? Was it really just a fall? Or was it something much darker? Something more sinister? The truth lies in the forgotten corners of history, shrouded by time and tangled in layers of myth. What if Humpty Dumpty's fall wasn't an innocent accident, but the inevitable crush of something far older, far more symbolic? Let's begin at the beginning, the well-known story you've been told since childhood. Once upon a time, there was a peculiar figure, rotund, jolly character known as Humpty Dumpty. He wasn't a man. Not quite, though he had the form of one. He wasn't even quite an egg, not in the way we think of eggs today. But he was round, perched up high, so high, atop a wall that seemed to touch the sky, the wall. Well, it was sturdy enough, or so it seemed. Nothing could threaten the quiet domain of this humble figure, who had no clear purpose but to sit content, serene. He wasn't quite forgotten, but he wasn't celebrated either. Just a fixture. A strange, curious figure on the wall. No one questioned his place in the world. That's how it is with some things, isn't it? They simply are. But then came the inevitable. One moment, Humpty Dumpty sat there, balanced precariously in the calm. The next, in a heartbeat, he fell. It wasn't just a tumble, no. It was a crash. A shattering. A catastrophe so complete that not even the king's finest horses or his bravest men could restore him. They tried. Oh, how they tried. They gathered around his broken form, helpless. Unable to fix what was beyond repair. What does one do with something shattered? When something so perfectly whole, something so seemingly innocent is broken beyond recognition. The rhyme ends here. There's no hope, no resolution. Just broken pieces and an eternal question that echoes in the silence. What was Humpty Dumpty, and what really caused his fall? But that's not the end of the story. This is only the beginning, my friend. The version of the story you know, the one passed down to you through sing-song rhymes, cheerful illustrations, and innocent nursery books, is only the tip of the iceberg. Humpty Dumpty's fall is an ancient riddle, its origins older than the nursery rhyme itself, stretching back centuries and possibly millennia. What we know today as a simple children's rhyme has roots in political satire, religious allegory, and even deep-seated mythology. To understand the full depth of this tale, we must venture back into the fog of time where the first whispers of Humpty Dumpty began. The earliest known printed reference to Humpty Dumpty appears in 1797 in a collection of nursery rhymes published by a British author named Samuel Arnold. But the rhyme itself is believed to be older, passed down orally through generations before it was ever committed to paper. Arnold's version was brief, but his name Samuel Arnold might not mean much to you. Yet his publication was part of a significant shift in how stories, legends, and history were being preserved, particularly in an era where oral traditions were beginning to be replaced by printed material. But what most people don't realize is that Humpty Dumpty's fall was not simply a child's accident, it was a tragedy shaped by political and social unrest. Some scholars argue that Humpty Dumpty was not a figure of innocent foolishness, but a metaphor for something much darker. One particularly haunting theory points to the fall of a royal figure, King Richard III of England, who met a violent end at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, according to this theory. Humpty Dumpty wasn't an egg, but the shattered figure of a King Humpty, a corruption of hump, referring to Richard's distinct physical deformity. But more than that, Humpty Dumpty may have been symbolic of the fragile nature of power itself, as Richard was unseated, so too did Humpty Dumpty fall, powerless against the forces of fate and war. The rhyme, then, could have been a veiled commentary on the unpredictable collapse of political figures. If this is the case, Humpty Dumpty's fall wasn't he just a physical event, it was the inevitable collapse of an empire, or of a leadership structure, or of a belief system. Humpty Dumpty was the body of power, shattered irreparably, and no one, no matter how powerful, could put it back together again. Yet even deeper, there's a more unsettling theory. Some trace the figure of Humpty Dumpty even further back in time, to the ancient world. The concept of a great fall of something divine or powerful broken by its own hubris appears in mythologies across cultures. In the Greek myth of Icarus, for example, we see a figure who, like Humpty, soared to height close to the sun. His fall was not merely a fall of the body, but a fall of ambition, of pride, of human limitations. Icarus, like Humpty Dumpty, was shattered by the very heights he sought to reach. And then there's the biblical echo, Lucifer himself. Cast from heaven in a blaze of fury, the most powerful of angels, brought down by his own defiance. Shattered by his fall. The story of Humpty Dumpty, it seems, may not be just a simple fable, but a distillation of something far more profound: the fragility of power, the danger of pride, and the inescapable consequences of falling from a great height. Yet, these are just the surface connections, the historical and mythological threads that have been woven into the tale. The true origins of Humpty Dumpty are far older and far more tangled than any of these stories. We must go further, dig deeper, uncover what has been hidden, buried beneath centuries of retelling. Now that we've traced the origins of Humpty Dumpty back through history, politics, and myth, we come to a crucial question: what does this story mean? And more importantly, what has it come to symbolize across centuries, even millennia? At first glance, Humpty Dumpty may appear to be little more than a simple nursery rhyme, a quaint tale for children. But if we strip away the layers of time, we uncover something far more intricate. The figure of Humpty Dumpty represents something much more profound and far darker than mere misfortune. He is a symbol, an archetype, a vessel for ancient and timeless ideas. Let us start with the most obvious symbol, the egg. Eggs have been revered and feared for centuries. In ancient cultures, they were often seen as a symbol of life and death. The egg is the primal form, the beginning and the end. A fragile shell encasing something potent, something unknown. The egg embodies both potential and fragility, a tension that runs deep in the human psyche. When we turn our gaze to Humpty Dumpty, the egg becomes not just a symbol of life, but of vulnerability, of the delicate balance between creation and destruction. A wall solid, impenetrable, represents the limits of human ambition, the heights one might reach, only to fall helpless. It's a reminder of our own fragility in a world of vast, unyielding forces. But Humpty's fall is not merely physical, it's spiritual, psychological, and even cosmic. In this way, Humpty Dumpty is akin to the mythic figures of gods and heroes who, through pride or fate, fall from grace. Consider the tragic fall of Prometheus, punished for his rebellion against Zeus. Or the tale of the Tower of Babel, where human ambition to reach the heavens led to chaos and collapse. Humpty Dumpty, too, represents that ancient mythic archetype, the inevitable fall of the overreacher. And what about the phrase, all the king's horses and all the king's men? This part of the rhyme speaks to an ancient truth: there is no salvation for those who fall from such heights. It's not just a lamentation over Humpty's shattered form. It's a bitter realization that power, no matter how great, cannot mend what's broken when it comes from within. No one, not the king's horses, not the king's men, can repair that which is irreparably shattered. The power of the king is useless in the face of this fall. This line might speak not only to political power, but to the deeper psychological and spiritual truths about the limits of human agency. Here we see a fascinating connection to something deeper still. Ancient and medieval alchemy often featured the motif of the broken vessel, an object, often a pot or cup, shattered, unable to hold its precious contents. Alchemists saw this as a metaphor for the soul, broken by sin, or the body shattered by human failings. Perhaps Humpty Dumpty's fall is not just the breaking of a figure, but the breaking of the world itself, splintering into pieces that can never be reassembled. But let us consider one more layer. The fall of Humpty Dumpty could represent the ancient fear of the collapse of order. In a time when order was paramount, when kingdoms, religions, and societies were built upon rigid structures, any fall from these structures was seen as a cosmic violation. Humpty Dumpty's fall could have symbolized the fracture of such systems, the very foundation of society, shattered by the fragile nature of power, belief, and order. It might speak to the collective anxiety of the time. What happens when everything we hold sacred falls to pieces? Yet there's a final, more haunting possibility. Could Humpty Dumpty, in his fragility, represent the soul itself? The fragile, broken nature of the human spirit caught between the earth and the heavens, perched precariously on the wall of existence. The fall, then, is not just an accident, but the inevitable plunge into the unknown, a reminder of the fleeting nature of life and the irreparability of death. What if we are all Humpty Dumpty, sitting atop the fragile wall of life, waiting for the inevitable crack? These meanings of pride, ambition, power, and fragility are all deeply ingrained in the psyche of humanity. And just as the story of Humpty Dumpty echoes through the corridors of history, so too do these themes resurface again and again in our myths, our literature, and our lives. But there's more to this story. Much more. As we stand on the precipice of the present, staring into the fractured image of Humpty Dumpty, we must ask, where did this symbol of fragility and collapse truly come from? The rhyme, with its broken egg and its desperate, futile attempts to piece it together, is not merely a product of medieval England or the nursery rooms of the 18th century. It is something far older, something primal that stretches back through the sands of time. To understand the deeper, ancient roots of this tale, we must travel far beyond the walls of the nursery rhyme. We must look at the great cultures of antiquity, the civilizations whose myths and symbols survive in fragmented pieces, much like Humpty Dumpty himself. The symbolism of fragility and collapse, the theme of a figure perched precariously upon a precipice, only to fall, is an echo found in the oldest stories of humankind. In the ancient Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, we find echoes of this very motif. Gilgamesh, the mighty king, reaches for immortality and the gods themselves. His fall, though not literal, is a fall from grace, a confrontation with his own mortality. The very humbling of the hero is a theme found in the fall of Humpty Dumpty. Gilgamesh does not shatter like Humpty, but his self-perception is shattered by his realization that he, too, is subject to the forces beyond his control. Traveling east to the ancient Vedic texts, we find a similar archetype: the Asuras, rebellious gods who challenge the celestial order and suffer destruction as a result. Much like Humpty Dumpty, their fall from the heavens is symbolic of the collapse of order, of chaos being unleashed upon the cosmos. There's a sense here, too, that the fall of Humpty Dumpty might represent a cosmic event, a fracturing of something once whole. In ancient Greek mythology, we encounter the tragic fall of Icarus, whose ambitious flight toward the sun leads to his inevitable death as he tumbles into the sea, his wings melted away. There is once again a mirror image here, a figure of great power, soaring to high, falling to far. His fall is physical, yes, but it also represents the hubris of mankind, the delicate boundary between the mortal and the divine. In this sense, Humpty Dumpty is more than just a symbol, for he is a symbol of the human ambition to transcend our own limits and inevitable consequences when we do. What does all this tell us about Humpty Dumpty? His fall, whether it is the literal shattering of an egg, the ruin of a king, or the spiritual collapse of a god, isn't just about an accident. It is the rupture of order itself, a theme that has resonated throughout the ages. It is the archetypal collapse of the cosmos, the cracking of the world, breaking open to reveal something dark and irreparable. Humpty Dumpty's fall, then, speaks not just to the fragility of life, but to the fragility of all systems, whether political, social, or metaphysical. This symbolism was not lost on the people of the ancient world. They, too, knew that myth survived because they spoke to something universal. The imagery of an egg, fragile and precious, being shattered and irreparably broken, survives because it connects with a core, deeply human fear, the fear of collapse, of the loss of order, of the splintering of the world we depend on. And we must ask, why, after all these years, does Humpty Dumpty still resonate? Why does his fall echo through the ages, from the courts of kings to the bedrooms of children? Perhaps because we are all Humpty Dumpty. Perhaps, in his shattered form, we see a reflection of our own vulnerability, our own fragility. Perhaps we understand, deep down, that no matter how high we rise, no matter how solid we build our walls, the fall is always inevitable. And no matter how hard we try to put the pieces back together, the cracks never truly heal. The origins of Humpty Dumpty stretch back to a time when ancient peoples understood the fragility of existence itself. But there's still more to explore. We've seen the fall, the symbolism, the ancient ties to our most primal fears. But what if this story could be more than just myth? What if the fall is a warning? To answer this, we need to return to the nursery rhyme, only this time we'll look at it through a radically different lens. You know the rhyme. You've heard it since childhood, a harmless nursery song about an egg who fell from a wall. But as we've uncovered the ancient depths of the story, its chilling implications have become clear. Humpty Dumpty's fall is more than just an innocent accident. It's a tale of fragility, of power's inevitable collapse, of the destruction that waits when we push too high, too far. You thought it was only a nursery rhyme. But what if it's a warning? What if Humpty Dumpty's shattered form is a reflection of the world we live in? In a time when all feels stable, when the walls we build seem so unshakable, it's easy to forget how fragile our world truly is. Humpty Dumpty is the reminder, perched precariously on the edge of oblivion. He is the fragility of civilization, of the human condition itself. The king's horses, the king's men, they can try to fix it, but no one can truly repair what's been broken. Once the fall has happened, once the pieces have scattered, there is no going back. This is not just a story about an egg. It's a story about you. About the world we live in. About the cracks we choose to ignore. We sit on our own walls, don't we, perched high, believing that the order we've built is unshakable, but the fall, like Humpty Dumpty's, is inevitable. The cracks appear slowly, like tiny fractures in a wall too long neglected, and when we fall, we find that there are no easy fixes, there are no quick repairs. The pieces cannot be put back together again. Humpty Dumpty's fall is an eternal reminder that nothing lasts forever, that everything we build, everything we hold dear, can crumble in an instant. His shattered form is a haunting symbol of our own fragility, the fragility of power, of ambition, of life itself. So, next time you hear the rhyme, remember this: Humpty Dumpty is not just a fallen egg. He is the collapse of the world, the breaking of the order, the irreparable fractures that run deep within all things. His fall is an ancient prophecy, a warning that has echoed through the ages, through the crumbling of kingdoms, the falling of gods, and the shattering of the human spirit. And what of the king's horses and men? They try, desperately, to put things back together, but they will never succeed. The pieces are too broken. The world too far gone. Now the pieces of Humpty Dumpty lie scattered across time, across myth, across history. And the question lingers in the air, who will fix it when we, too, fall? This is the world we live in. A world where all the king's horses and all the king's men can do nothing but look on as the walls crumble and the pieces shatter. Next time, we'll explore another dark corner of folklore, another tale that has been twisted and forgotten by time. But for now, take heed of Humpty Dumpty's fall. It may not be as far off as we think.